Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cross River Partnership's second lunchtime launch session. I hope you're all keeping very well, and also that you have a very tasty treat in front of you to eat while we're speaking together. This session will be all about monitoring and how to make it really meaningful in terms of planning transport-related interventions. My name is Susanna Wilkes, Director here at Cross River Partnership, and over the next 45 minutes we'll be sharing with you the results of our most recent research on monitoring. This includes how data can be captured, transforming monitoring data to be meaningful and practical for transport planning purposes, and how captured data can aid the decision-making process. So before we make a start, a few quick bits of housekeeping I would like to mention. This lunchtime launch session is being recorded and will be available to view online. I know you'll be able to see that there's just one person watching this event. Please don't worry, you're definitely not alone in watching, and I can assure you there's a lot more than one person. If you have any difficulty seeing or hearing during this lunchtime launch, please make sure you've joined us via the Google Chrome browser. We find this one definitely works the best. You should have PowerPoint slide visuals and speaking voices throughout this session, both at the same time. So, during today's lunchtime launch session, we are going to be joined by a number of experts from across the industry. These include Mariana Barrios, Business Development Manager at Vivacity Labs, Abigail McDougall of CRP, Fiona Cool of CRP. We'll also be joined by CRP's Stav Friedman, who will be moderating the chat facility on the right of your screens. If you would like to expand the chat function at the bottom right corner of your screens, please press the arrows on the top right corner of the attendee and speaker lists to make them smaller. And last but by no means least, we have CRP's Josh West leading all of our tech for the session. During today's lunchtime launch, we're going to cover all of these topics on your screens, and we will launch officially CRP-produced reports and tools that use live monitoring data. There'll be a chance for you to have your pre-submitted questions answered at the end of all the presentations. We'll try our very best to answer all your pre-submitted questions, but if we run out of time, we will respond to you after this live session. So before we make a start, we'd like to pose a question to you, the audience. How do you think data could be interrogated differently in the future to enable even more meaningful monitoring to inform the management of transport in our cities? Pop your thoughts in the chat box to the right of your screens, remembering to add your name and organisation too. Without further ado, I'd now like to tell you a little bit about the background to these latest monitoring results from CRP. Just in case any of you out there are new to Cross River Partnership, CRP was formed 27 years ago to build the Millennium Bridge across the River Thames. By now, CRP is delivering London's future together with partners including local authorities, business improvement districts, landowners, and other strategic agencies. Our vision is to empower people to deliver innovative projects that support places to respond well to the challenges being thrust upon us. CRP is supported by a number of major funders who make all of our work, including this lunchtime launch, possible, including central government units Defra and Innovate UK's Challenge Fund, as well as the Mayor of London. These are some of the projects that CRP is currently delivering with partners. Most of the monitoring interventions that you'll hear about this afternoon actually cut across many of these projects, enabling useful comparisons to be made and lessons to be shared between different organisations in different locations, both within and outside London. In order to show the strategic and proactive approaches being taken towards making monitoring meaningful, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce my colleague Abigail McDougall, Technical Project Officer at CRP.
Thank you, Susanna. Hopefully you can hear me. It's amazing to have so many of you here for this Thursday lunchtime session, so thank you all for joining us. I'm conscious we might have a slightly varied audience today, so I was going to kick off by talking quickly about how transport planning might have changed over the last year. Now, I am not myself a transport planner, so I'm super interested in any of your thoughts. Please do feel free to chuck anything in the chat box. Perhaps you'll agree or disagree with some of the themes that I'm going to mention. So the first of which being the fact that we've seen the planning process be accelerated. The pandemic itself posed a very immediate risk, which created a sense of urgency. And in many cases, we've seen the traditional stages of consultation be fast-tracked. A good example of this would be Transport for London's Street Space for London, where we saw pavement widening and pop-up cycle lanes quite literally pop up in a very short space of time. But this kind of phenomena was not unique to London. And in cities worldwide, actually, we saw interventions that were also quite ambitious. So like COVID disrupted the status quo, and it provided a stimulus for us to be a bit bolder. Ideas like the 15-minute city or creating car-free streets or even car-free cities, these were not new ideas, but they were boosted up the agenda as we started to rethink how we might interact with and use our cities. This here you can see is actually a road closure in Indianapolis, where parking spaces have been reallocated to outdoor dining. It's similar to the outdoor dining that we've seen in Soho, here in London. And it's creating quite a bold statement that vehicles are not the priority here. And I think the reason that we're seeing ambitious plans being implemented very quickly is partly due to the fact that we're seeing the rise of experimental schemes too. Now, these are being introduced on a short-term or temporary basis, a perfect example of which are the low-traffic neighbourhood that we've seen spring up around London and the UK. But unfortunately, with this experimental territory, there does come an element of controversy. And while controversy is not new in the world of transport planning, we have seen a very active debate in the last year around low traffic neighbourhoods. And I think what's clear is that there's a lot of passion and strong opinions on both sides of the debate. I guess if you're wondering, why am I talking about this? Well, I think these themes have implications for the value of monitoring right now. Monitoring's long been important as part of transport planning. If you're spending money, you're going to want to check that your scheme or initiative is doing what it actually set out to do. You're also going to want to identify if anything's going wrong so that hopefully you can put it right. As I said, these ideas definitely aren't new, but I would argue that the value of monitoring has been brought into much sharper focus over the last year. With the rise of experimentation, we can expect to see hits and misses. And with the research and consultation phases being condensed, we've seen in some cases misinformation and inaccuracies creep into the debate. So in that sense, monitoring's got a really crucial role to play for bringing people into the conversation that may have felt otherwise excluded. And if carried out correctly with transparency, this can also build trust and bridge the gap between opposing sides. And indeed, if the results reveal positive outcomes, as one would hope, this can help build confidence in what you're actually delivering. And this translates into supporting that transition away from the temporary towards permanent, sustainable, and successful schemes. And for these reasons, plus many more, monitoring's been firmly put on the agenda for Cross River Partnership, as we recognise the real power of data particularly as we were thrust into uncertain and unusual times almost a year ago now. And this particularly initiated the Vivacity Monitoring Programme, which my colleague Fiona will be talking about in much more depth later on, but also across all of our programmes. As part of the Clean Air Villages project, we've been running a citizen science study with staff at King's College Hospital. Now, they've been installing diffusion tubes to monitor levels of nitrogen dioxide around the hospital site. This helps to empower the staff by involving them within the conversation, but also the data collected informs the hospital about levels of pollution around their site, helping them to identify any potential hotspots. And I think this is a good demonstration of the multiple roles that monitoring can often play in any one scenario. Now, also as part of the Clean Air Villages project, we have developed 14 new clean air routes, and monitoring again is really at the heart of this project too. You can see here the handheld devices that were used to compare the direct route with the clean routes. And now by direct route, I mean the standard route proposed by journey planners such as Google Maps or your city mapper that help to get you from A to B. And by a clean route, I mean an alternative that we've developed between the same A and B that aims to take you away from busy, polluted main roads and along quieter side streets, and where possible through parks and green spaces. Now, this is helping to create a healthier, but also a more pleasant and enjoyable walking and cycling experience. Now, next slide. Monitoring has actually demonstrated that by taking a clean air route, people can reduce their exposure to nitrogen dioxide along these clean air routes by up to 40%. And by monitoring these, we have obtained powerful and quantified evidence to demonstrate exactly how much better the clean air routes are. And I think this ties in with my earlier point of providing that proof of concept, which builds trust and confidence in the clean air routes and ultimately encourages people like you or I to take them. But monitoring also helped to flag potential concerns. So we actually monitored 15 routes, but one of the routes sadly didn't make the cut. It didn't demonstrate the reduction in pollution required for us to actually claim it's a clean air route. And without monitoring, if we had just relied on modelled data alone, we simply wouldn't have been able to flag this issue. Now, I'm conscious that I am short on time today, but if I have potentially piqued your interest to learn more about this project, then you are in luck. So myself and Tranquil City, who we worked really closely with on this project, we presented in more detail at a previous CRP event. I think the link to that will be shared in the chat, if not already. But if you don't want to hear any more of my voice, which I really wouldn't blame you, then we've also published today the final report on our website. Please don't be put off that it's some 97 pages. There's plenty of maps and graphs to keep you entertained. And just lastly, if I have time, I'd say that if you live near any of the clean air routes that we've developed, then I'd definitely encourage you to get out there and try them. And even if you don't live near any of these routes, then perhaps take a look at the journeys that you're making on a daily basis to your park or to your nearest supermarket. And are there any small adjustments that you can make to create your own clean air route, perhaps? And if you do this, then do let us know how you get on. So that is it from me. So I'm very excited to introduce Mariana from Vivacity Labs, who've been doing some really exciting work, providing all important real-time data insights. So it's over to you, Mariana.
Thank you, Abby. Hello, everyone, and hope you can hear me okay. As Abby was mentioning, I'm going to quickly take you through a bit of an introduction of our traffic monitoring system. Vivacity offer video-based traffic sensors. These sensors typically sit on the side of the road in street furniture. Most common, we use lamp columns, but we can also put these sensors in traffic lights or even on the side of a building. Very important in terms of an introduction, I just want to quickly take you through how our system operates. we do use inside the device an edge processor, and this is very important for me to mention because this helps us comply with all our privacy first approach and privacy first policy. While they're video based, we actually take the video and process it inside the device and then erase the video immediately. And all we send back to the cloud is the raw data. So as I go along and I take you through some of the features and capability that our sensors can provide, I will be pointing out about how we meet the different data privacy requirements. So moving on, I want to show you just a bit about how the sensor operates. Unfortunately, I was not able to present a video I wanted to bring today. My fault, I had a bit of technical difficulties, but instead I decided to take a few print screens of how a field of view from one of our sensors will look like. This is one of the examples. We have, the sensor can have 1 or 2 lenses, and with one lens we have let's call it a wider field of view that we're able to capture. And when I say wide, we can easily, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you can easily capture the right-hand side, the sidewalk, the side street on the left-hand side, the other sidewalk, and we can go as far as 50 or even 70 meters down the line, and this is always to do with the height at which the sensor is being mounted. In terms of capabilities that we offer, we have a number of capabilities that can be provided from a single device. And just to start with, the first one that I want to take you through is what we call path data. Path data is actually those lines that you see, in color lines that you see in the middle of the screen, sort of like following the movements of each of the road users. And that's exactly what the path data represents. The path data shows how the road users utilize the available space in the road. This is a capability that is very popular, very demanded, especially for planning purposes. And just to give you a bit of an example, and in line with some of the recent events that Abby was mentioning in the previous presentation, very common in the last year, we've been hearing from our customers using this capability for making new initiatives to make high streets more pedestrianized or at least semi-pedestrianized. So we could pretty much use this path data and overlay all the different path data, for example, for a couple of hours and see how the pedestrians are using the available space. Moving on, we also have what we call the classified counts. The classified counts, I will say, is our core capability. And if you see at the bottom of the screen, there's a dotted line in pink. That will be the virtual count line that we would draw within the field of view. So the way it works, the system, is that we use a machine learning algorithm that is able to not only detect but also classify the road users, which means that we will already know whether it's a pedestrian, as you can see the example on the screen, but also if it's a car, if it's a van, if it's a cycle or an HEV, etc. And as the road users crosses the count line, this is being counted. And in fact, we can count in the 2 directions, so it's bidirectional. One of the beauties of this capability will be that, hold on. One of the beauties of these capabilities is that we can also provide multiple count lines. And as you can see in the screen, is in this example, we could easily provide 1 count line per lane, but also we can offer 1 just for the sidewalk. And again, just bringing a few of the most recent examples, one of the most popular demanded features that we got requests in the last few months, or especially in the back end of last year, has been having an extra count line just to count the amount of cycles, the cycle volumes within a particular cycle lane. And again, this goes very hand in hand with the amount of pop-up cycle lanes that we have seen in the back of the active travel tranche 1 and now tranche 2 promoted by the government. Moving on, we also had a capability called occupancy. Occupancy pretty much tells you the amount of road users that are at a particular time within a space that we define in the field of view. This is typically used for the equivalent of queue in length or queue density for traffic for vehicles, but we could easily use the same for pedestrians. And in fact, in some places, we're using this for feeding back to the traffic algorithm by telling the amount of pedestrians that are in the waiting areas in a crossing. Moving on, we also have what we call turning counts. This is a capability I'm very happy to present as we developed this for TfL last year in one large project that we're doing for them. And now this is a capability that we offer as part of our standard capabilities. And as the name suggests, with the turning counts, we're able to offer counts on the different movements within the field of view. So we can tell how many vehicles are going straight ahead or turning left. And the way we do this is we will draw zones within the field of view, and then we will give the customer a matrix with all the sort of origin and destination within the same field of view. Finally, we also have speed. Very important to mention, while we provide speed, and in fact we can provide spot speed, but also average speed, this speed is not used for enforcement purposes. Again, this is all to do with the privacy point of view and our policy to have privacy and data privacy first. And we also have two more capabilities. These are journey times and origin destination. These two last capabilities, and I'm going to move to the next slide in a second just to elaborate a bit more, are more to do with using a second lens. I don't know if you remember that I mentioned it, that it could be one or two lenses. With one lens, we could have all of the capabilities I just mentioned. And then if we, on top of that, add the second lens, we will have two more capabilities that are related to the standard ANPR offering. And again, I couldn't bring you a video in this time. I wanted to show how the two lenses operate at the same time. But as you can see from the single sensor on the left-hand side, we have this wider field of view, which is the equivalent of the one I was presenting on the previous slide. And you can see that we're capturing, in this case, classifications, but also path data. And on the right-hand side, we are actually using the second lens to zoom in and really capture the number plates. One thing to mention again, in terms of privacy, is that the way we operate is that we use a hashing algorithm. So in fact, this is an exemption that we have in the screen because all of the images that we use, we also blur. That's sort of our standard. This is more for marketing purposes. But we capture the number plate and then we hash it, so we become pseudo-anonymized. But it's good enough for us to match it with the same vehicle in a different location. So at the end, we're offering customers a journey time from point A to point B. And as you can imagine, this tends to be a very valuable information for our customers, especially local authorities, when it comes to measure the impact of certain interventions. Journey times, it's related to congestion or to delays or to improvements on congestions and improvements on possible delays. So of course, it's very tangible to measure the results of those interventions. Moving on, I quickly want to move into the classifications, the classified counts that I mentioned before, that it was more of the core capabilities. Very quickly to say, at the moment, we have 9 standard classifications that we offer. Those includes pedestrians, cyclists, bike, and everything that you see at the bottom. And very important, within our normal deployments, we typically obtain between 95 and 99% accuracy. Again, very important to mention that while the machine learning algorithm plays a key role in terms of making it extremely precise and being able to detect and classify it, the way we set up the project is extremely important, meaning we always have to work very closely with the customer to make sure we understand the use case. And if the priority, for example, is to prioritize on cyclists or on pedestrians, we will make sure the lenses, the angle, the location of the sensor is appropriate in order to optimize it. And if we optimize the setup, absolutely, we're happy to confirm that we can provide these levels of accuracy. And my last slide, and I know I'm just running a bit of out of time, so I'll run through a bit quickly, if I may, just to take you through how we offer the customers to access the data. And this is in fact how Cross River Partnership has been using the data so far. One of the main tools has been the dashboard. The dashboard is a cloud-based dashboard. It's extremely user-friendly. It's very intuitive, to be honest. Many times I schedule trainings and the customers say, no worries, I'll figure it out myself. But customers can log in and download their own reports on classified counts, on turning counts. They can track the path data. We have the journey times in there. But we also offer an API. And through the API, the customers can either call the data themselves and create their own reports, but we can also use it to integrate with existing interfaces that are very common in the industry. So far, we have integrated with C2 Drakewell, with Cloud Amber, with Stratos, and with other controllers such as Tinic and even Talent. This takes us to the end of my presentation and what I wanted to show you for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to post it on the chat at the bottom. And now I would like to hand over to Fiona Cool from the Cross River Partnership, who will be taking us through the latest project that we have implemented with them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mariana. I hope everyone can hear me, and welcome to this session. So following on from Mariana's presentation, I thought it would be good to give you an example of this monitoring technology in practice. So CRP's Vivacity Monitoring project is now reaching its final stages and has involved partners from CRP's Clean Air Villages 3 and Healthy Streets Everyday programmes, helping them to understand the impacts of temporary street space interventions or to identify areas where streetscape interventions could be implemented. The project involves using Vivacity sensors to analyse classified traffic and active travel counts, such as pedestrians, cars, etc., that Mariana has already mentioned. These then cross the sensor's count line. This data can also be integrated with CRP's in-house Measure Best tool to calculate estimated emissions associated with cars, LGVs and OGVs in the local area, providing even more in-depth analysis. Additionally, the sensors are capable of monitoring pedestrian interactions, helping to understand the relationship between pedestrian numbers and space, and thus providing an insight to how well a street can enable social distancing. By providing partners with these rich data sets and in-depth analysis, we aim to provide the proof of concept for partner interventions, as well as robust guidance in terms of monitoring. So here you can see the monitoring locations associated with the CRP's monitoring programme. In total, we have 16 sensors that have been installed across London. In terms of what we've been monitoring, we have been helping our partners to monitor a wide range of interventions, such as school streets, pop-up cycle lanes, and timed road closures. We've also been helping partners to understand road behaviour using track lines to see how different users behave on the road space before and after an intervention has been implemented. So far, the data has presented some really interesting analysis, such as impacts associated with road closures, roadworks, and we've also seen some marked trends that respond to changes in restrictions. So I thought I would take you over a bit of that analysis. So as part of CRP's in-depth analysis, we have created hourly averages of the count data to help understand the impact of changes throughout an average day. In summer 2020, some of Soho's streets were closed to vehicular traffic during certain times of the day to provide more space for hospitality businesses to trade, whilst also reducing the risk of transmission of coronavirus. This enabled outdoor al fresco dining, as businesses could bring tables and chairs onto the road space between 5 to 11 p.m. each night. The closure of the street can be clearly seen in the data analysis, with almost no cars being present during the time that the restrictions were in place. The surge in average car counts that is then seen at 10 p.m. onwards is likely to be associated with private vehicles or taxis collecting customers from the hospitality venues. Additionally, if we look at the hourly averages for pedestrians, let me see if that changed. There we go. If we look at the hourly averages for pedestrians, we can see that the area draws in a lot of people and it's clear that the intervention is working. There's a clear trend with pedestrian numbers rising throughout the morning and peaking in the late afternoon and early evening. And it's also clear that the area attracts more people during the weekend, with pedestrian numbers peaking at 2,540 pedestrians at 3 p.m. on a weekend, compared to 1,570 pedestrians at 5 p.m. on a weekday. This is a stark contrast to the average car counts on the previous slide, which remained low throughout most of the day. So another benefit of monitoring is that it can highlight the occurrence of events or something that is unexpected, and how this might impact behaviour. Here we can very clearly see in the analysis that something has had an impact on daily car counts. This was in fact due to roadworks being introduced in the area, making the road unusable, and hence the huge drop-off in cars. Additionally, as I said before, the monitoring programme was able to help partners understand the implications of wider government announcements associated with the coronavirus pandemic. For example, during this monitoring period, the central government stay-at-home guidance and 10 p.m. curfew was issued nationwide on the 22nd of September, and London entered Tier 2 restrictions on the 17th of October. Interestingly, pedestrian counts remained fairly constant following the work-from-home guidance. However, once the Tier 2 restrictions were in place, pedestrian numbers appear to begin gradually decreasing, which may reflect the fact that people were only able to meet inside as households or outsides in group of up to 6. So, as mentioned previously, the Vivacity sensors are also able to provide an insight to the relationship between pedestrian numbers and available space, and in some instances, this relationship was explored. Although that on average, when pedestrian numbers increase, the number of interactions also increases, there are some instances where this hasn't been the case. So, for example, on Monday, the 19th of October, following London's entry into Tier 2 restrictions, there were, although the pedestrian numbers were fairly average for the monitoring period, there was actually a large number of social interactions. So on this day, 5,588 pedestrians were recorded, yet 44,182 interactions of less than 2 metres occurred. And this could be due to an obstruction on the footway, causing space to be restricted and therefore making it harder to maintain social distancing. So that is something that would need to be confirmed, but is something that this data can highlight. So if we then move on, as part of the programme, CRP is providing individual reports detailing the findings associated with each sensor, including analysis on the count data, social distancing where applicable, and the implications for local emissions. However, we would like to stress that this service is not just available to partners associated with our monitoring programme. CRP appreciates that many local authorities, business improvement districts and landowners are currently facing resourcing pressures, and as a result we are offering value for money data analysis services to help unlock the potential of your data. By providing in-depth analysis that is tailored to your needs, we can help you to provide the proof of concept for local initiatives whilst also enabling data-based decision-making for both you and your stakeholders. So if this is something you would like to understand more about, please do get in touch. And thank you very much, and apologies again for that slight internet dropout there. Perks of working from home, eh?
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Fiona, and big thank you to Mariana and Abby as well. So we've now got time to ask a couple of the pre-submitted questions that you, the audience, have let us know. First of all, we've had many people interested in monitoring air quality at school street locations, both outside the schools and in the adjacent streets. And they've been informed that these short intervals of roughly 1 hour in the morning and afternoon school peaks can't be measured accurately with diffusion tubes. So they wondered if we had other suggestions. I wonder, Abby, if you could suggest other measurement methods to us for about a minute?
Yeah, thank you, Susanna, and thank you everyone for your questions. Yes, they've mentioned in the question there diffusion tubes, which are great ways to measure long-term and ambient levels of nitrogen dioxide concentrations. For example, we're using them in the King's College Hospital citizen engagement study, and they're great because they're so low cost to install. But you typically leave them out for 4 to 5 weeks at a time. So they're not suitable if you're looking to get a picture of what's happening within just like a 1 hour road closure. For that, you're going to need more continuous real-time monitoring. I would suggest, I personally haven't done any monitoring of school streets, but I would suggest that the audience member who asked this question might be interested in the project launched by the Mayor of London last autumn, I believe, as part of the Breathe London project, where they'll be monitoring nitrogen dioxide levels at 18 primary schools across London to measure the impact of school streets. And they'll be using relatively low-cost sensors from a company called Clarity Movement. So yes, I would recommend getting in touch with the Air Quality Department from the GLA if you want more information about that. Yeah.
Great, thanks very much, Abby. That's very useful. Mariana, turning to you, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about your Vivacity monitoring exercise and replicating it for other modes of transport.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Susanna, and great question. Yes, at the moment we are only using these 9 classes that I mentioned in the screen. However, we're undergoing a very large research project. This has started maybe almost a year ago, and it's all about extending the number of classes that we're monitoring. So we're planning to add things like e-scooters, which is a very popular and demanded class, but also things like cargo bikes and so on. It's quite an extensive research exercise. You guys can imagine that we have to train the algorithm and feed a great amount of image. In fact, one of the problems we have with e-scooters is that there's not enough. We think we see a lot in the streets, but there's not enough in the street at the moment that we're capturing. So we have to add more images ourselves. The long story short is by the end of March, we're going to have the results of this phase of the project, and we're going to announce the order of classifications that we're planning to introduce. As I was saying before, there will be classifications such as e-scooters that absolutely will be priority. In fact, some of the customers are already asking for that and planning to invest on further development to fast track that classification. And as we go along, we'll include more. Just small thing to add. We are at the moment offering extra classifications for more bespoke project. Example being Canal River Trust, we're already offering horses, or I believe it's either joggers or wheelchairs. So if anyone has any particular demand, feel free to ask. We might not have it as part of the standard capabilities, but if it's in the making, we will be happy to look into it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mariana. Fiona, I wonder if you could let us know some more examples of how captured data has led to important decisions being made, including the redesign of streets.
Yeah, definitely. So one case study that is really interesting is actually part of TfL's document Small Change, Big Impact, which I know Stav will share in the chat, but I'll just give an overview for you now. Effectively, this was implementing traffic calming measures on New Park Road in Brixton. Initially, the road was used as a rat run by motorists to avoid traffic lights and congestion. Collision rates had been 40% higher than on similar roads in Lambeth, and in the 4 years prior to the project starting, 12 people were injured in collisions, including 2 students of Richard Atkins School. So in response to this, the project involved piloting a different road layout using low-cost materials and hay bales as temporary measures to slow down and reduce the volume of vehicles. And on the street day, there was lots of engagement. There was a concert organised by pupils, a visit by a fire engine to demonstrate being able to fit through the reduced road width, etc. But most importantly, there was data collection, which included measuring traffic speed and volume. And this was then used to make the case for the trial layout to become permanent and actually show that surrounding streets wouldn't suffer from increased traffic as a result. This data actually helped the councillors and borough to give support for a permanent scheme, which was then installed and completed in December 2016. So that I thought was a really good case study of monitoring in practice.
Absolutely. Great comments there from everyone. Thank you very much. Just to reassure the audience, all unanswered questions, they will be followed up outside this live session. Otherwise, we'll be here all afternoon. It's really great to see all the comments that you are submitting in the chat, and we will address them via follow-up materials that will come out to all of you tomorrow. So do remember to have a look at all of the reports and links that we've posted in the chat function this afternoon. What I would also like to encourage everyone to do is to sign up for our next lunchtime launch session, which will take place in a month's time on the topic of town centre futures. And at this one, we'll be launching CRP's latest research that we've been undertaking with the think tank Centre for London. So do sign up for that session if you can. If you do have any further queries, please don't hesitate to get in touch with any of us that are shown here on the screen. Our email addresses are all there. I would like to really sincerely thank all of our speakers today for giving brilliant presentations and for keeping going in spite of technical challenges. A very big thank you to all of you in the audience for tuning in and for all of your thought-provoking comments and questions in the chat. Finally, I would like to wish you all the very best. Remember to stay safe, and we will definitely see you all again very soon. Thank you very much.